Is this hitting right? Yeah. Absolutely.
Good morning, everyone. I'm not sure if you experienced the surge the way we did, but as you can feel, we're still getting a little organized from the little blink in power that took place just a few minutes ago. But it is my absolute honor to welcome you here today for this, for our conversation together with Michelle Icard. As we begin, why don't we begin with prayer? So the Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Almighty God, you set the solitary in families and you call your people to community. Be with us this morning as we talk about what it means to be those who can live lives on a journey together, and help us with both candor and kindness, with both laughter and joy. Talk about those issues that are on our hearts, and help us to know of your abiding grace with us in all things. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Real honor to welcome Michelle Icard to be with us this morning. Michelle, thank you for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
For those of you that don't know, just a little bio on Michelle. Michelle is a nationally recognized speaker and author and educator who spent over 20 years helping parents and teachers and young people navigate the complex terrain of that thing that we like to call adolescence. Her thoughtful, practical approach has made her a trusted voice in homes and schools all across the country. She has authored a number of books, including one called The Middle School Makeover, 14 Talks by Age 14, which I have found very helpful so far already in my journey, and her most recent book, 8 Setbacks That Can Make a Child a Success. Michelle is a regular contributor to the Today Show parenting team and has been featured in any number of other places. Michelle lives right here in Charlotte and brings both professional insight and personal wisdom to today's conversation. So, Michelle, welcome.
Thank you.
We're so glad that you're with us today. So, Michelle, I wonder as we get started here, we've framed our conversation today the sacred work of growing up, right? Growing up is something that we all do, and we all do in different ages, stages, seasons of life that are going on. When you think about the work of navigating adolescence as sacred work, what comes to mind for you?
So for me, sacred means profound, meaningful in a good way, mysterious, and deserving of our respect. And so the process of growing up as it relates to being sacred is that much of it is a mystery to us. To us as parents and to us as experts even, it can be really deeply mysterious. And there's a part of it that's biological. So I sort of consider growing up to contain 3 buckets.
Okay.
We have, and I will often refer to this as the adolescent construction project. So there are 3 things that your young people are working on building in order to become an adult. And that's an adult body, that's the biological part, an adult brain, biological but more confusing, and an adult identity. And so the body part is kind of the easiest, typically. It progresses in a linear way, and also you can sort of see it happening, and so you know what's going to come next. The brain part is a bit of a mystery because we can't see it happening, and it's not linear. Your child will one day be really mature, and you think, oh, we've arrived. You know, my kid just asked me how I'm doing. That feels great. What a grown-up they are. And then the next day, they have a temper tantrum over something. And then the identity piece is figuring out who they are apart from you, who they are as individuals, and that to me feels the most sacred. So it's really mysterious, it's really meaningful, it's very profound, and it's deeply personal.
It strikes me that that the work of differentiation is a work that we're all doing all the time.
Yes.
Right? Even as we get older and we have parents that are aging, or the whole journey through, we're kind of doing this. What makes the journey of understanding the difference between you and me and me and you and me and others, what makes that so much more nuanced in adolescence? I mean, I like the 3 buckets, but why does adolescence such a critical time for this?
Well, prior to adolescence, adults make the meaningful decisions regarding how their children perceive themselves. So think of the things that you do as an adult that are sort of your markers of identity. How you dress, how you present yourself to the world, who you're friends with, what your values are, how you spend your free time. Those are, I'm a pickleball player, or I'm a, music fanatic, or whatever it may be. Those are components of your identity, and we choose those for our kids until they hit adolescence and they want to start picking for themselves. And it can feel like a rejection, and it can feel rebellious, and it can leave us confused or hurt, but kids need to start deciding, who do I want to be friends with? Because it's a real reflection of who I am. And I'm a big fan of metaphors. I call this process bellying up to the buffet. Kids need to, at a certain point, try a little bit of everything to figure out who they are. And if you took a kid to a real buffet and said, there are some amazing things here that you've never tried and you might love, but if you put something on your plate, you have to eat all of it, they're not going to really try. So we have to give kids the opportunity to try a lot of new things on in early adolescence, and that can feel very uncomfortable. It also means we have to let them quit a lot of things to make room for trying more.
All right, so you just totally blew my mind. I'm going to be honest with everybody. I grew up in a house where if you put it on your plate, you ate it all. Anybody else? Yeah? Okay, so now I'm doing a little bit of my own work here all of a sudden, right? But letting kids, and sometimes even letting adults, choose is hard.
It's hard. It means relinquishing control. And that is the hardest part of being a parent. And if you have any kind of hesitation about giving up control, talk about having some faith, you really have to have faith that your ability to give up control is good for your child and is not going to put your child at higher risk, is not going to damage your kid in the long run, but is the key to helping your kid figure out who they are and grow up with a sense of independence and a sense of connection to you.
So this journey that we make with our kids and that some people are making with grandkids and with others, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. And it certainly can't happen absent of conversation and dialogue with people. In your book, one of the ones that we have upstairs that people can buy or they can get elsewhere, 14 Talks by Age 14, you talk about this frame for 14 really crucial conversations that parents can have with kids by the age of 14. I want you to say a little bit about why 14 is important.
Sure.
And I'd love for you to say about, as a community of faith and as a community of people trying to honor the sacred work of growing up without sort of relegating our responsibility, which conversations do you think are really important for us as a people?
All 14.
All
I'm
14.
just kidding.
Okay, thank you. All 14, really important.
I'll start with the easiest question, which is why 14?
Yeah.
It marks roughly the end of middle school and the beginning of high school. There's also some research that shows that 14 is the most dangerous year of a boy's life. And the book is for boys and for girls, but that really stuck out to me. It's an age of risk-taking, and it's an age where kids lack impulse control. So those two combined can be dangerous. And so I want you to start having the conversations before that happens. It doesn't mean you close the book when your kid turns 14 and you don't have these talks anymore. The process and the topics are important through high school, through college. I've had people say to me, this worked with my husband. It was great. So, but I do want you to start well before 14. If you can touch on them all by about the end of middle school, that's great. The ones that I think related to faith community are most important are the topic of independence, because again, there's that leap of faith. I need to allow my child to become independent from me, and that means physically independent, and that means thoughtfully independent. They may appear to you as a contrarian or as rebellious. You may worry about their safety. All of these things are normal, but you need to be talking about it. And independence typically shows up in two ways, either cocooning, so going up to their room and isolating or exploring, going out into the world without you. And those are tough for parents to sort of understand either of those. So that's a big one. The other one I think is relevant to any community, faith community, school community, neighborhood community, family, is talking about reputation. Because I think we as adults are very concerned about what other people will think about how we're doing. What's our report card as a parent?
Yeah.
And we tend to worry about ourselves, and it expresses itself as judging others. Where we say, I want to keep my kid and my family really safe, so maybe we don't let them hang out with that kid because that kid made a mistake once. So I want to be very careful about those kinds of conversations and opening up space that allows us to be fully human and worry less about our reputation and more about what we're learning from what we're experiencing as humans.
So you talk about how this stage is normal, right? And when Lisa Damore was here, a really good friend of yours was here, she said it over and over and over again to parents as well. She's like, it's just normal. Everything that's happening is normal. I found a little bit of comfort in that, and I can do it. And then something happens, and I'm like, "This is not normal."
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
Like, how in the world am I supposed to respond in an appropriate way right now to what's going on? This just doesn't feel good.
Right.
And yet, to your point, like we all in some way feel that pressure from the community around us to make sure that we're getting it right.
That's right.
As parents. So say a little bit about what's normal about being a parent who's trying to navigate a really complex, quote unquote, normal journey with a child, and how we as parents can be a kind of community that supports one another through this stage that everybody goes through.
That's right. So normal doesn't mean not hard. Normal doesn't mean not painful. Normal, I think of, means to be expected. We know that there are going to be bumps on the road. We know that kids are going to make mistakes. I hope they make mistakes. We'll talk about that in a little bit, I think. Yeah. But I really want your kids to screw up. I do. And so to be expected is how I think about normalcy. It doesn't mean it's not going to hurt. A couple of things that you as a community can be doing to sort of personally get through those moments and then to help each other through those moments. One is to find a whisper network. So when a child has a crisis, a failure, a setback, a challenge that knocks you back a little bit, the tendency is to shroud that in secrecy because we don't want anybody to know. That'll make it worse. Putting sunlight on it will make it worse. I think putting sunlight on it will disinfect it. I don't want you to blast it out. This is your child's story to tell. Yeah. But you'll need some help and some guidance, and keeping a secret hurts. So I would say use a whisper network, which means find someone you trust. They may not have had the exact same experience, but go to them and say, we are experiencing what I think is an eating disorder. We are experiencing what I think might be drug abuse. We are experiencing a real crisis of confidence, and I don't think my child has a friend. Whatever it might be that is so painful that you're guarding, tell one person who you trust and ask them, do you know someone I can talk to? You will find very quickly a sort of underground network of parents who want to help, and a parent who has been through something similar, I can almost guarantee wants to talk to you. Yeah. So find a whisper network is a big one. Yeah. And I'm going to give a quick little shout out to a group in town that I think is a great whisper network, NAMI. So that's the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they do really great work hooking you up with people who can talk to you about what you might be experiencing. Yeah. And I'll just name like one of the hopes of this first and next conversations that I think we're going to be able to have is that we can continue to be intentional. I know Elizabeth Walker, our associate for Children, Youth, Family Ministries, is wanting to be really intentional about figuring out ways to create small groups and small networks for all of our families to be able to cultivate relationships through the varying ages and stages of life.
And in partnership with our Center for Wellbeing and Care, I believe that we can continue to figure out ways to have these kind of whisper networks that are out in the community, but there's so much wisdom that exists in this room and in all the rooms that are Christ Church already. And so I love this image of knowing that you can make a small call, and that whether we like to believe it or not, there are probably people just around the corner already saved in your phone that you're already on text groups with that you would never imagine, who have already gone through the hard things that you're going through and worse, but you may not even be aware of it.
That's right.
And that's that sort of taking the veil off, putting things into just enough daylight to be able to walk the sacred journey of growing up together. Because it's not sacred. Now I don't want to go to preaching, but I can get close. It's not sacred because it's separate. Okay? Sometimes we think about holy things as being those things that are over there, shrouded, kind of hidden. Maybe it has a little candle flickering next to it. That's kind of how we think about sacred. Things become holy because they become practiced. And I think the holy work that you're talking about is the holy work of being in community that brings this stuff out, of having the conversations that allow it to just be normalized and can allow us to navigate the stuff that we're facing.
That was so cool what you just said, because they are practiced, and ritualizing is a big component of that, and it's a big component of growing up. We had a lot of rituals for our children growing up. And so that's already embedded in what you're doing, and we need to embed this piece of it, of understanding and accepting that failure and setbacks are part of this process, will be embedded in it, and that there are ways to ritualize them and to get through them, and talking with someone is a big part of that.
Yeah. So Alice DeVries, our youth minister here on staff, has a line where she is always talking to parents and teens about just being better listeners and not just advice givers. She preaches over and over and over again and says it all the time. If we can just come alongside our kids and get into the soup with them, we might be surprised what we learn and how our faith goes. I feel like your 14 talks is a model and a mode by which we as people can kind of come alongside and be better listeners. Say a little bit about tips for us on ways that we can be better listeners and not just advice givers.
Okay, I love this question. The first answer I'm going to give is not mine. I didn't write this, and I don't know where I heard it, but I love it. It's the idea that to be a good listener, you are listening with the intention or the openness that you will be changed hearing what you hear. You're not listening just to take it in and shoot back. I heard you say this, let me tell you what's wrong about that. You are listening very much with an open mind and an open heart, saying, I'm gonna listen to you, believing I might be changed by what you say. I think that's really important as a listener. The methodology in 14 Talks that I created and recommend is called the brief model. It's 5 steps. I'm not going to go through it right now because it's too long. But you go through 5 steps of sort of gently getting into a conversation with a child at an age when conversation is the first thing that gets sacrificed in your relationship. Communication is what ties groups together. So when your child becomes an adolescent and they realize they need to pull away from you and figure out who they are independent of you, they sacrifice conversation. It's one of the first things to go. So the process in the book talks you through sort of re-engineering how you talk to your kids. And a big part of that is listening with curiosity, listening with the sort of intention that you might be changed, and giving your kids some authority in the conversation, or at least over the subject matter. A great example of this is someone I follow online. It's the gamer educator. If you have kids who are into games and you are not sure how to talk to them about their online presence and activity, and you can't get them to pull off of a game when it's time, the gamer educator is brilliant. And one of the things that they do is they have you ask questions that are pretty specific. So instead of just, I've seen you on that forever, how long have you been on that game? Is not a great conversation starter. But what are you trying to achieve on this level? And how will you know what to do once you get past this level is a great way to engage your kid and get you into a conversation that can be really meaningful about a topic that's pretty thorny in most houses.
I don't know about any of the other parents in the room, but the idea of being changed by a conversation with my 12-year-old is kind of frightening.
Yeah. Why?
Anybody? Right? You're entering into a conversation. I say that with all due respect to the 12-year-olds in the room. My son may be in here, I'm not sure. But the idea that somehow, at times, right, it means being radically open to the reality that I have something to learn here.
And it doesn't mean your child's going to convince you they should be on video games for 8 hours a day.
Right.
It's not that. You're not open to that.
Yeah.
But you might be surprised at what they enjoy about their video game and the meaning that that game brings to their life and their experience. If you're open to that, that could be really fun.
That's helpful.
Yeah,
that's helpful. So you've talked about gaming. Can we talk about technology?
Let's do it.
All right, let's talk about technology. Technology is a tool. And I think in today's world, we are a generation of people, we're the first generation of people, I believe, with the current technology that we have, who've had to figure out how to navigate the challenges with wisdom. We're sort of, let's call it, almost 20 years now into the iPhone experiment. And the iPad experiment, we're less than that. We're only like 12 years into it or something like that. And we've learned a lot about brain science. We've learned a lot about the way that the tool was created. I wonder what wisdom you have for us about navigating this life with this tool that has so much power and so much potential to do so much good in the world. And how you would help us to navigate what technology is all about in this regard.
Well, I love that you recognize the good that it can do, because that's sort of the open-mindedness we need to bring into any conversation that we're going to have with kids about technology. When I talk to families about social media or YouTube or just smartphones, whatever it is, I always say, this is a tool, and like any tool, in order for it to be helpful to you, it must be harmful to you. So you want to teach your kids how to cook for themselves at some point, and the stove you want them to cook on has to be hot enough to cook their food and hot enough to burn their hand. And the knife that you want them to use in the kitchen to cut their apple has to be sharp enough to cut the apple and sharp enough to cut off, tip of a finger. So that we are very accustomed to teaching our kids how to use tools that are dangerous and helpful. Any good tool is, right? So I think that these conversations with our kids have to begin in recognizing what's helpful here, what's useful here, and being open to that. Because there is a lot about whatever your child wants to do with technology that provides them entertainment, connection, creativity, soothing, whatever it may be. And then the conversation needs to include, and how can it be dangerous? And especially teaching kids how to recognize cues in their own body for when it doesn't feel good to use the tool anymore. Are you hitting yourself on the thumb with the hammer repeatedly? Do you feel that? That doesn't feel good? Are your eyes dry from looking at a screen? Are you crabby? Are you hungry? Are you just hoping that if you keep scrolling, you'll get the next dopamine hit, but you don't, and you keep scrolling and you keep scrolling? I do this, right? Where I'm like, maybe the next one will be funny. Maybe the next one will be funny. And it's just ad after ad after ad. So I think the key to thinking about any kind of technology is understanding balance and not demonizing it, and having an intent to negotiate with your child. Parents are a bit uncomfortable with that concept. But we need to teach our kids compromise. We need to teach our kids how to negotiate. So having conversations around technology that recognize pros and cons and that offer some form of compromise and negotiation are really key to helping them work through something that isn't going away and is only going to get more and more complex.
So I think at the heart of some of these technology conversations or tool conversations or is a fear.
For sure.
I think the thing that we as parents just don't want to do is that we don't want to get it wrong.
Right. That's okay.
I know. We really want we want our kids to succeed. We want our kids to be happy. And with some of these big things like technology, or allowing risk, or allowing failure, is a challenge, because ultimately we want to be faithful and do the best we can to parent, right, and to walk along. Talk about why you think that failure is okay and part of the sacred journey, and how we can navigate that sort of sense of fear that we might have in that journey.
From a parent's perspective, I'll begin by saying you're going to mess up. You're just going to make some bad decisions, and your kid's going to make bad decisions, and that's okay. You've already got to sort of preemptively forgive yourself for that, because you're all human, and there is no perfect way to do this. So I understand the desire to say, I want to get this right, particularly if control is a thing that you struggle with, and you think, I don't want my child to have to live with a mistake because I didn't protect them from that mistake. That's giving yourself a lot of credit because you cannot live that way. Your child is going to make mistakes. Not only that, I want your child to make mistakes. And the basic reason for this, that I want every child to have a significant failure during their adolescence. I'd love for them to have many, many opportunities, in fact, to feel pain and discomfort during adolescence, is based on my understanding of a rite of passage. I think we have gotten away from the true meaning of a rite of passage. Now, as parents, we sort of consider a rite of passage to be a passage of time. And so when you're 13, maybe you get access to a social media account. And when you're 16, you get some car keys. And when you're 18, your curfew's later. So we time things, and we consider those rites of passage. A true rite of passage involves some key ingredients. First, going off by yourself. Individuating, separating from your group. That could be your friends, your family, your community. 2, you face a challenge while you are alone. You mess up because it's your first time as an individual facing a big challenge on your own. So you make a bad decision, you screw up, you learn from that, and then you reintegrate into the community a better version of who you were before you went off on your own. So we understand this as a culture. It is May 4th, so I can bring up Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
So every YA book or movie that you have ever loved has followed that. The kid, the teen, separates from their group. They go off to fight the rebel forces, or they Stand By Me, they walk down the railroad tracks to find the dead body, or The Hate U Give, they go to the protest, even though their parents told them not to go. Yeah. They do something on their own, they face a challenge, they mess up. They learn from that, and they become a better version of themselves. So we understand this in a storytelling cultural way. You may have studied this in college, you might understand this in a sort of academic way. Where we don't understand this is in our families. We have a very hard time allowing our kids to experience that. Yeah. But the more a child has an opportunity to do that, that's how they become an adult. That is how we usher kids across the threshold from childhood to adulthood, by letting them learn really important lessons.
You know, the church has any number, you're helping me, because the church has any number of things that we would call rites of passage that we seek to hold out and to model as opportunities. Confirmation is one of those rites of passage that takes place in 8th grade. And what I think is helpful for me to sort of name here is that whenever we have 8th graders who enter into that journey, for us as clergy and leaders of the confirmation journey, it's never a given that the 8th grader is going to get confirmed.
Yeah.
But for every family that puts their child in a confirmation class, it's a given. My child is going to get confirmed, right? That's the journey.
Right.
But what strikes me about the way that we approach that is that what we know is that confirmation is a mature public affirmation of faith. Mm-hmm. And so that journey that each 8th grader here that we do here has to be able to make is the journey of being able to say, this is mine now. Mm-hmm. Like, you made promises, you did well in getting me here, and now I wanna make this. How can we as a community, and how can we as families create an environment or a family within which when those setbacks happen, we can empower our adolescents to say, without shame, this is what happened, and this is mine now. Like, this is part of my story now. This is part of who I am now.
Yeah. I have a 3-step process for this, believe it or not. So, when a child experiences a setback or a failure of any kind, there are 3 steps that I want you to imagine that will help them learn from that experience instead of getting stuck there in the muck. So the first is, it's called contain, resolve, evolve. So contain, I want you to imagine this like you're watching a tennis game. Contain, the ball is on your side of the court. That means you're taking some action. So you say, oh, I've noticed we have a problem. And containment could be marking it, just saying it, or it could be actually containing the child. If your child is doing something that is dangerous to themselves or to others, then you might have to say, hey, your world's gotten really big really fast, and we're gonna shrink it down a little bit and spend this weekend together at home figuring out what our next move is. Or it may just be saying, I've noticed you seem very unhappy recently. So it could be, either of those. That's your job, to contain it, to mark it, and to say, here's a problem. Then the ball bounces to your child's side of the court. Your child then needs to take any action, one action, to help themselves feel a little bit better during this crisis. There's a lot of research. There's 5 decades worth of research done by Marty Seligman on our human response to pain and discomfort. And what he learned through his research is that our default response to pain and discomfort is to bear it, unless we learn very quickly that we can do one thing to ease our pain. And so, can I very quickly explain this?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into great detail, but there was a study that he did with college students, and he put them all in one by one into a room. A white room with nothing in there but a speaker, and it just blasted torturous noise into the room. And there was a button on the wall. And so the kids in group A would go in, hear the noise, freak out, see the button, and go press it. And when they pressed it 4 times, the noise would stop. And then the kids in group B were put into an exactly the same room, a replica, that had the same horrible noise, the same button on the wall. They went over and pressed the button, and the button had been disabled. So nothing happened, and they just crouched down, each kid, and covered their ears. The second part of the experiment, the kids in group A are put into a new room with a different noise, and instead of a button, there's a lever. So the kids in group A who had success, the 4th time they hit the button, the noise stopped. They immediately clocked that lever, went over to it, and started moving it. That I can do something to stop this pain. They learned very quickly. The kids in group B went into their room, which had a lever and a terrible noise, and this time the lever worked. And this time, no kid from group B went over to try the lever. They learned from that first experiment, nothing works. I might as well just sit down in a corner until someone comes and gets me out of here. I want your children to have endless opportunities before they leave your nest to experience incremental pain and discomfort, and I want you to contain that and say, hey, I think we have an issue here. I want them to learn how to press the button. So maybe they need to write an email to a teacher. Maybe they need to apologize to someone for what they did. Maybe they need to drink a glass of water and take a walk around the block to feel better. But it's not for you to fix. They have to learn how to press that button. So you don't do anything when they're doing resolve, and then evolve. The ball bounces back to your side of the court again. And this is probably the most important part. You don't keep talking about it. You say, that was a tough experience. You did something really good by apologizing or journaling or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be the right thing. It just needs to be something. You did something really good when you did that, and I'm not going to keep bringing it up. We can talk about it anytime you want, but I'm not going to keep pressing the bruise. And so onward. We're putting it in the rearview mirror. Good job.
That's amazing. You have any number of networks of parents and families who join up for conversations online and who get together. What have you found in your journey, like in the Whisper Network, that families being able to talk and to share encouragement from working this kind of a process? What have you discovered in the community as people have done this about resilient families and about raising resilient kids?
To me, the most beautiful thing that happens in a community when a child experiences a setback is when the parents move forward in support of that family without judgment. So I have a whole list of things in 8 Setbacks that parents have told me other families have done for them when they were in crisis, and they are the most simple things you could ever imagine. The simplest being saying to that family, we love your kid, and this could happen to anyone, and we're here for you. Because the thing that we worry about is isolation. Are people going to avoid my child now that they've experienced this? Are people going to whisper about us behind our back? Are people judging what we're doing here? So just saying to someone, we love you, we love your family, and this is something any family could go through, so we're just here with you, is huge. Along with all the stuff that Southerners tend to do, like dropping off food, like that's great, that's so good, but a real acknowledgement that there is no judgment happening is really helpful, because a family will presume that is what's going on. So saying it out loud is big.
Even if it's not.
Yeah, even if it's not, you will presume it's going on, even if it's not. That will be your fear.
It strikes me that even this notion about the button or the lever, that's not just about individuals, that's also about entire family systems.
Yes.
It may be that any of us, in any of the homes that we grew up in, we learned that lesson as kids as well. And what I've discovered in my own life, and as I've walked this journey with good therapists and spiritual directors and with people who I know are a part of my Whisper Network or that I can talk to, is that I had to unlearn. I had to unlearn for myself that certain buttons actually worked in terms of alleviating the pain or to making the noise quiet down in myself or in the rooms that I'm in. Because with all good intentions, our families did the best that they could with the tools and resources that they were given to walk that sort of journey with us. And yet, part of our sacred work of growing up is the work of doing our own work.
That's so
at
big.
Growing up, so that we can evolve into the new kinds of spaces and places that we need to be in.
Hooray for therapy, really, because I grew up in a household that was chaotic, and I learned from an early age that it was my job to manage other people's emotions. And as a mom and a wife, that was what I thought my job was, to make sure that everybody was okay. I really thought that was my job. And it took a therapist saying to me, like, everyone's allowed to be totally human, and all you need to do is ask them. First, say to them, I'm going to ask you how you are, and then I'm going to believe you. And if it's not true or if it changes, you can come back to me. But I really needed to say to my kids, if you tell me you're okay, I'm going to believe you're okay. And if you're not okay, come back and tell me.
Yeah.
But if I can't spend my life worrying that dad's big voice made you upset and you're in your room because you're mad at dad and dad's mad because you're not doing, I just was tying myself in knots over this. And a good therapist is the one who said, that's something you need to unlearn. That good coping skills serve us well for a while, and then they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the beautiful things about this conversation being in conversation with our creation of and implementation of the Center for Wellbeing and Care is just that ongoing sort of sense that we're all on this evolutionary well-being journey, and that oftentimes when we think we need to see a therapist, or oftentimes when we think it's good to have a conversation partner for something that's going on in our life, is when the moment of crisis is happening.
Right.
We wake up and we go like, I've got to figure out a way through this. I've got to get to the other side, and that is great. And there's a real opportunity for us to be preventative in our practice of well-being practices, such that when we get to the point that those things begin to creep in or to happen in our lives, we've already been on the journey of asking the hard questions that we need to be asking, because inevitably, for ourselves or for someone else, the wisdom that we may gain in the journey of making that journey is going to be beneficial.
Or for someone else is key.
Or for someone else is really, really key.
Yeah, and especially I think for teens, if when they are in a crisis, they can be really reluctant to go talk to a counselor. And so if you can arrange for that relationship prior to anything derailing, it's so nice just to say, I just want you to have someone who knows you, so that when you do need to talk down the road, if you do, you already have this.
Yeah.
I think that's huge.
There was a book that came out a number of years ago called Sticky Faith, and I think we did a couple of faith forums on it. But one of the pieces of wisdom that it offers was that kids and teens who have the capacity to name 5 caring adults in their life. That's 5 people that they know, if they have something that's going on in their life that's outside their mom, dad, grandparent, but they have 5 caring adults in their lives, have what the authors described as a stickier faith, a capacity to know that they had resilience and a network and a group of people with whom they could go to if they were having something that was going on in their life to make it through the journey that was next. Because ultimately, it's great if we as parents have those kinds of relationships, but what we really want is for our kids and even ourselves to have the kinds of relationships with people that will allow us to make it through the next journey. And so one of the practices that we did out of that faith talk was to begin to sort of say, let's set ourselves to empowering our teens to be able to write down the on a sticky note or in a note card that they could keep, or something they could keep in their phone, like, here are the 5 people who I know that, if it hits the fan, or if I'm stuck, or if I need to talk, and if my parents I don't feel like they're listening, that they know and I know that I can reach out to in order to make it through the journey that we're happen to find ourselves in. And it just strikes me as we're talking, like, yeah, we want family to be that, but it's also why, this is an advertisement, it's also why when Elizabeth and Alice and Savannah Jane and Sarah and Laquita say, hey, we're looking for mentors and for people to volunteer in youth ministry, that this is so important. It's not really about needing warm bodies to play games. It's not really all just about sort of making sure that the food is there and that things are there. It's not even really about you having all the questions or all the answers to the great, questions of faith. What it's really about is about us being a community who's willing to show up at the various ages and stages of life together so that we might become one of those 5 core people in each other's lives, so that when the stuff happens, when the setbacks occur, we each know, guess what? I'm not alone. And someone was there for me. Or I knew they might be there for me
Yeah.
if I was facing something that I didn't know just how to get through. I wonder, was there somebody like that you can think of when you went through the adolescent journey or the post-adolescent journey who was able to be there for you to help you through some of the setbacks that you faced in life?
I spent a lot of time studying other families as a teen. I was like a little anthropologist because I wanted to figure out how they worked.
Wow.
And so friends' families for me became really important. Television was hugely important to me in figuring out how families worked. I watched sitcoms with families and I thought, oh, you sit down to dinner together. Okay. So you can go and talk to your parent about something that's embarrassing and they don't get upset. So I learned a lot from TV. And then I had really good teachers. I had very caring, very thoughtful teachers at my school. I grew up just outside of Boston. And I remember in particular, this is so minor, but like I think about it all the time. Mr. Farber was my 9th grade English teacher, and he was a yeller. I mean, this was in the 80s when you could really yell at a class, and like there was no consequence. He was a book thrower. He was just volatile, and I was scared of him. And we had to write something. It was the beginning of 9th grade, and it was the first thing that we had to write, and it was a little biography. And I just made myself invisible in his class. It's all I could do. And he wrote on the first thing that I wrote, it came back with red marks all over, and I turned it over, and then I peeked, and it said, A-, you are a writer at the top. And I was like, my life turned, because I thought I had no idea who I was. I couldn't have been more lost as a kid. And when he said that to me, I thought, oh, I'm a thing. I have a thing. This is so cool. So I think being an adult who sees something in a kid and just making that statement is so powerful. The kid who's the class clown knows he's funny. The girl who works really hard on how she presents herself knows she's pretty. But if you can find the thing, this is a little plug for our summer camps, which we're having one here.
Yes, we are.
We work really hard to find the thing in your middle schooler that they don't see yet and to say it out loud. And we are very afraid of labels as adults, but I think labels can be so inspirational. When that teacher said to me, "You're a writer," it changed my life.
Say a brief thing about the 2 camps that we're offering. One of them here.
Yes.
We have a few spots left available in the one that we're offering here, but I know that there are a few other sites around the city of Charlotte where they're offering them. So say a little bit about the 2 different camps.
Okay, so Athena's Path is our camp for girls going into or in middle school, and Hero's Pursuit is for boys. I wrote the curriculum 20 years ago. We've been having camps for that long here in Charlotte. What happens at camp is based on the curriculum, your kid learns 2 lessons a day that are focused on navigating the social world of middle school. So maybe it's how do you say something when you feel uncomfortable? How do you respond when a friendship makes you feel worse than it makes you feel good? How do you stick up for someone? All these things. And wedged in between that are loads of group activities and games. And for girls, it feels like a sleepover. A lot of times they come in their PJs and they bring a pillow. And for boys, it feels like gym class plus a lot of fun. And we work really hard. We have great high school interns who make sure that every kid feels like they are an important member of that community of kids.
Yeah. And this summer, we are offering a Hero's Pursuit as one of them. We have a few spots left for the boys' camp, and we're really hopeful that in the years to come, we'll be able to offer one of the ones for girls as well.
Amazing.
So you said something just a moment ago, and the question popped into my mind. I don't even know if I have a good answer for it. You may not.
Okay.
So this may not be a good question.
I love
just wanna say that out
the
loud.
randomness.
Okay, so, and maybe you all can think of your answer in your head as well. All right, so which sitcom most like your family?
which was most like my
Well, yeah,
family.
which, when you think about your family and you think about the sitcom family, which family?
The Simpsons was
Oh.
probably most like my family.
Right.
And
Right.
the one that I wanted my family to be like, and this has not aged well at all, was The Cosby Show.
Oh, yeah, not aged well.
No,
Not
but
aged
that's
well.
the one at the time that I thought, oh, that's a great family.
So I'm going to say, I'll tell you the first one that came to my mind.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Good Times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Y'all remember this show?
Yeah.
You remember? Okay, that was
Yeah.
the first one that came to my mind. And then I thought I should probably say the Andy Griffith Show.
Really?
But no, that's
No,
that's
the Good
definitely
Times-
not it. Good Times was definitely loud, kind of
Yes.
fun,
I like
chaotic.
that.
The parents were
And a real community. The neighbor might come in and watch the kids for a while, or
It's just kind of how it was.
Good times.
This has been an extraordinary time, an extraordinary conversation.
Thank you.
I'm excited because this is not the last time that Michelle is going to be a voice for us in our community. We're exploring some possibilities for a family faith talk in the fall. We're exploring the possibilities of doing some monthly coffees with Michelle as a part of a Christ Church offering for parents, both at the CCK level and here at the adolescent level, that would take place on a monthly basis. And there's any number of other partnerships that we're really looking forward to taking place. I wonder if you had one last parting piece of advice for us as a community of faith, seeking to be that place where our kids can grow and learn and thrive. What's the last little piece of advice?
Well, it's going to be a metaphor.
I love it.
It's always a metaphor. Okay, this is how I like to think about parenting, and you can think about it as sort of a church community or a family community in your home. I call it being a greenhouse parent. And what I mean by that is that greenhouse keepers keep their greenhouse so perfect. The temperature is ideal for growing tender little plants. It is the most nurturing environment in the world. And then they take their little plants and they go outside and expose them to the freezing cold, and the plant hates it and it shrivels up. And they bring it back inside. And incrementally they do that until they're ready to go plant the little baby plant in the earth. I want you to think of yourselves as a community, as a greenhouse where you have the most nurturing, loving, perfect environment for raising young kids. And then occasionally you open the door and you let them go out into the world where they make bad decisions and where they do things that they regret and where they feel embarrassment. And then you welcome them back into the greenhouse without judgment, and you say, this is a loving place for you to recover from what you just experienced. And as they do that incrementally, they become stronger and stronger. And when it's time for them to go off to wherever they go after they leave your house or your community and they move somewhere else, they will be so much more resilient because of it.
Michelle, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your wisdom and for your time.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you very
everyone.
much. Thank you. Oh yeah, they got them loaded. They got them loaded.
We have to explain this.
All right, yeah. So we were talking to each other, getting ready, for
This
the
is our
conversation.
sitcom. This is the soft launch
This is
of
our
our
sitcom.
sitcom.
This is totally us. And we were like, we should totally show middle school pictures of us. And so I was texting my family, kind of going like, all right, I wonder what the picture's gonna come back. So do you want to say anything about yours?
Well, that's me in 6th grade.
Yeah. And I think this is me between like 7th and 8th. So here you go. I went through that bead phase and yet still managed to kind of work across into it somehow. I think my dad did my haircut.
Oh, my mom did mine. My mom did
there
mine.
you go, right.
Yeah.
So definitely still had the parents who were doing our
Yeah,
haircut.
good times.
Way to go. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Hunter. Thank y'all for being here. Thank you.
I'm glad that got up there. Oh, do you need to mention books where to go?
One more thing. I'll be upstairs in the new green room with Michelle, and we will do a book signing, and we have a few books for sale upstairs for anybody who's interested.